You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
All right, and it looks like we are live. We're going to give this second to breathe for just a minute. Allow John to get Facebook ready to go. Thanks, Bawana. We appreciate you, big dog. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He's your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, it's been a pretty decent week this week for me, at least in the getting back to health and everything. Watching the Broncos debacle against the Raiders on Sunday was enough to make me sick again. But, at least going into, I've kind of got a new formulation of different ideals on this team and kind of being a little bit more vocal about the deficiencies that I'm seeing with it. But we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Erick, how have you been, man?
I've been pretty good. And I just got to say, man, if you start talking about Max Protect and Denver needing to use that, I may just jump out of it. It's been a pretty good week. I'm doing pretty good. Getting everything all ready for Turkey Day on Thursday and stuff like that. And so just been focusing on that and focusing on the draft already and just super excited for the draft. I mean, that's what keeps me going during a season like this. And it sucks because I'd rather see the Broncos do well, but they're not. So
yeah, it does really suck, but I do appreciate you guys. Erick does a massive amount of work on the NFL draft every single year. We're not going to talk about the NFL draft upcoming in 2021, but Erick did actually just earlier today send me his 2021 prospect list. It's over 300 players long, and we're going to get started on that here soon. Got a whole bunch of breakdowns and stuff coming for you here in the future. But for today, guys, we have a very fun episode for you. We're going to go and break down the 2018 NFL draft class of the Denver Broncos, including Bradley Chubb, Clayton Sutton, and all the likes, and everything like that. It's going to be really good to kind of get a full breakdown 2 years later and going into year three, through year three, on what the Broncos 2018 draft class is producing and what they're doing for this team as a whole. But guys, before we get started, just a quick matters of business. You guys can follow us both on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also, guys, while you're at it, follow at DVDD_pod. That's the podcast account. Easiest way to keep in touch with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Also, follow at Mile High Huddle. That's the mother account. That's where you get breaking news and analysis on your Denver Broncos, film pieces and stuff like that, news and opinion articles, everything that you can get, as well as the Huddle Up Podcast Network as a whole. Guys, if you are in a financial place and capable of doing so, head on over kindly to huddleuppod.com and get your merch. Get yourself a hat. There's some t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, coffee cups, everything, something to fit your fancy, whatever that may be. If you're a Facebook follower, follow along and become a supporter at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click the blue subscribe button that you can get there. Become a supporter. It's another way to show your love for the show. If you're not able to do so, the three easiest things you guys can do to help the podcast and Mile High Huddle grow is subscribe wherever you guys are watching this show, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, anything like that. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like every video you guys see, and if you love it, share it. And before we really get going, guys, just got to do this really fast. Today's episode is brought to you in part by sportsbetting.com. Gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado, and here's what makes sportsbetting.com a no-brainer for sports fans, especially guys and gals that want to start betting. They have sharp odds and low juice, which means they have in-house bookmakers, and they're not a third-party provider of odds. With a reduced juice means that they have the best prices. They also have a hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover, meaning that the bonus money is yours after you bet it one time. There's 24/7 live customer support, which means there's always a real person in the United States. But here's the kicker. At sportsbetting.com, you guys can get a 100% risk-free week of sports betting up to $1,000. Not just one bet, but all of your bets. So play for a week, and if your losses exceed your winnings at the end of the week, sportsbetting.com will cover 100% of the difference up to $1,000 with a one-time rollover. So head on over to sportsbetting.com. That's www.sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle and capitalize on that risk-free week of sports betting.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Broncos country, listen up. Coors Hard Seltzer is not your average seltzer.
Rooted in Coors' long history of sustainability, the brand was inspired by a generation that wants to do good in the world with a mission to restore America's rivers. It's never been easier to do good in the world, to do something to make a difference, and Coors Hard Seltzer is paving the way by launching the world's easiest volunteer program. Whatever you're doing, by simply cracking open a can of Coors Hard Seltzer, you're volunteering because our waterways are at risk. 80% of America's rivers are drying up, but through a partnership with Change the Course, Coors Hard Seltzer is helping to protect and restore America's rivers. The way it works, each 12-pack of Coors Hard Seltzer restores 500 gallons of fresh water to U.S. rivers and the communities that depend on them. The results, 1 billion, that's with a B, gang, gallons of water restored to 16 river basins across the U.S., including the Colorado River, and that's just year one. Also, with Coors Hard Seltzer, you're getting 4 refreshing flavors, and it's one cool cause. Enjoy naturally flavored black cherry, mango, lemon lime, and grapefruit. The specs are in, gang. Coors Hard Seltzer is 4.5% ABV and only 90 calories.
Chad, I can speak from firsthand certainty that nothing quite takes the sting off a tough defeat like a Coors Hard Seltzer. I know that everything will be all right, that I got my black cherry handy, trusty Coors Hard Seltzer. For a football fan, win or loss, it's the way to go.
You heard it here, gang. So join the world's easiest volunteer program by simply drinking Coors Hard Seltzer. You, yes, you can volunteer to restore America's rivers. You buy Coors Hard Seltzer, you help restore 500 gallons of water into America's rivers. It really is that simple. So visit CoorsSeltzer.com to find a Coors Hard Seltzer near you. That's CoorsSeltzer.com.
For every 12-pack sold through 8/31/2021, Coors will purchase services from Change the Course to restore 500 gallons of fresh river water. Details at CoorsSeltzer.com. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Now, Eric.
Real quick, I just want to say, round of applause for Lance for getting to that without troubles breathing.
I apologize for that last week, and I tried to do the best that I could. Still not great, by the way. I'm still trying to get through all of the effects of being sick as I was a couple weeks ago. Now, this week, Eric, we're going to be talking about the 2018 NFL Draft class, and to really start it off, obviously the number 5 overall pick in Bradley Chubb, the outside linebacker, defensive edge player, 5th overall pick. Last year he missed 12 games after tearing his ACL, and this year it's been kind of rough. I mean, hit or miss as far as it goes. He had that really good game against the New York Jets a few weeks ago, week 4, where he had, 2.5 or 3 sacks. They had 10 total pressures, led the NFL that week, 106 total tackles in his career, 75 solo. The 71 total pressures throughout this part of his career. But outside of that Jets game, and it really kind of took Connor McDermott, their third-string left tackle, for him to be truly effective. What, in your mind, is the biggest factor for his ineffectiveness to date? Is it that recovery from the torn ACL from last year, or have teams really kind of tried to neutralize him with double and triple teams or chips out of the backfield?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Jets game is everybody thought that was going to be his game, that he was going to bounce back, and that was going to be the start of everything. 1/3 of his total pressures came in that game.
Yeah.
On the season. So that bounce back hasn't happened yet. Maybe that ACL injury is still bothering him that he's dealing with. Maybe he's still working his way back from that. Maybe there's a mental block. But my thing is if he's not going to get over this mental block, then that doesn't bode well. You got to, as an NFL player, you got to be able to get over that mental block that you have. And the biggest reason why we're talking about the 2018 class is because, to put it bluntly, Bradley Chubb's not getting enough criticism for how badly he's been playing.
Right.
He got completely dominated by Brandon Parker and the Raiders. Like, he's been a non-factor. And normally when he's not stepping up against the run or the pass, he's doing so against the run. But that hasn't been the case either. No. And the other thing with this is, and we talked about this privately a little bit, is you mentioned the injuries around him. Well, edge is the one position, or one of the few positions, where who's around you isn't that big of an importance, because you got to be able to win one-on-one anyways. And he's not getting double teamed at a higher rate. He's not getting triple teamed at a higher rate. He's just not doing just not playing well. And that's what it all comes down to, is as much hope as we had in him. I believed, people can go back and they can find the videos of my projections for the day or for the season. And I had Bradley Chubb leading the Broncos in sacks, having more than Von Miller. This was before Von Miller got hurt, and pushing for the sack record. I expected big things of him, even though he was coming back from an ACL. And that again, it just hasn't been there. And then Brendan Thorne, who is an absolutely brilliant guy with the offensive line, he did his thing about that shows that not all sacks are equal. And it talks about, and it breaks down high quality sacks and low quality sacks and stuff like that. And Bradley Chubb has an overall sack score of 4. And that's way down there. I think it's just like below middle of the pack, but most of the people are at 4 and 3 and everything like that. So he just hasn't been playing well. He hasn't been what's been expectations have been. And to a degree that's understandable. But at the end of the day, you need him to be, as James actually puts it, is you need him to be an alpha. You need him to be your Batman, especially with Von Miller out, and he's not. At this point, I would say, as much as I think Malik Reed hasn't been as great as he's been hyped up to be, Malik Reed has been more of that alpha or that Batman than Bradley Chubb has been.
Right. And I actually had a good question for you, and I'm just going to let you continue on with this because we all thought that Chubb was going to be that true Batman as a pass rusher as the number 5 overall pick in 2018. And as you said, he's been more of a Robin, a second fiddle, even to a Malik Reed. So I guess my biggest thing here is it's obvious that losing Von Miller is a huge hit for the defense as a whole, but what exactly has his absence done to Chubb's detriment, if anything?
Sorry, what was that? I was reading a comment.
So losing Von Miller obviously is a huge hit to the defense as a whole. So what has the loss of Von Miller done to Bradley Chubb's detriment, if anything? Is it really just that Bradley Chubb is struggling as his own player, or does Von Miller's absence really help Bradley Chubb be that second Batman, that 1A Batman, more than just a true Robin? Because right now he's playing as a Robin.
We had all hoped that it would sit there and have him step up and be that Batman. I mean, when you lose a player like Von Miller, that's what you want. And then you sit there and you have to look back at his rookie year, and he had 12 sacks, and you have to sit there and start thinking all right, did Von Miller have that big factor on that of helping Bradley Chubb look so good? It's questionable. And at this point, you start leading to say that Von Miller being out has a big detriment to him because Bradley Chubb can't win on his own. Yeah, and that's what it all comes down to. And again, as I said earlier, you got to be able to win on your own as an edge rusher. And if you can't do that, then you may not be lasting very long in it. And there's one comment that I want to get to, and it's from a good friend of the show, Paul, who he says that Fangio de-wastes edges, and I don't think that's true at all. I mean, you can go back and look at edges that he's had in different years in different places, and they're not wasted by any means. It's just his defense asks a little bit differently of them, and not all edge can play at a high level in it. But I don't think it wastes edges.
It all depends on the role that you're playing within that. And I mean, you got to look at the role of go back to what Vic Fangio was able to do with the Chicago Bears, where he had 2 actually high quality edge players in Khalil Mack, who's obviously one of the best edge defenders in the NFL, and then Leonard Floyd. And you got to kind of look at the role that Bradley Chubb is playing because he wants that strength to power with Bradley Chubb. And right now, with that knee injury and maybe even the mental block of that knee injury, he's not converting speed to power like he was in his rookie season where he had 12 sacks. I mean, he was well on his way to being one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And that's probably one of the biggest things. He's a big guy, very strong guy, uses great leverage and converts speed to power. This year, he's not doing that. He's not really effectively bull rushing guys. He wants more hand fight and to kind of bend around the edge, and that's not his game. And quite honestly, that's not because Vic Fangio wastes him. That's because Bradley Chubb is wasting himself, whether that's because he's coming off of that ACL tear or the mental block or without having a true Von Miller speed rusher on the other side. Because while Malik Reed is decent as a speed rusher, he's not a Von Miller, obviously. So yeah. Is that where Bradley Chubb's kind of coming from? Is he wants to be that true speed rusher and create those highlight plays that way rather than bullying a guy going into the backfield? I don't know.
That's what it really seems like. And when you're watching him is you see him often trying to get around the edge. And that's not Bradley Chubb's game. He's not that great athlete to do that. He doesn't have that hip flexibility to sit there and bend the corner and get to that low angle of that 45-degree angle and really turn that corner. His game is made about going through the tackles.
Yep.
But the issue is if he does that too often, he becomes predictable and he doesn't have a good go-to counter. And it's a lot of issues that are just stacking up on him. And at this point, I'm not sure he knows what type of pass rusher he wants to be. And that for me is something that's very scary, is you should always have an idea of what kind of pass rusher you want to be. Shane Ray, despite how bad he was, he knew what type of pass rusher he wanted to be. And so it doesn't always mean you're going to be good, but you got to have that, and you got to have a plan of attack. And that's where knowing what kind of rusher you want to be, that's where that factor comes in, is it knows how you want to attack. And it's just a combination of, against the Raiders, there were times where he looked like he was trying to take the edge, and then he just decided to stop and just try to cut it short. And Parker was right there and just not setting him up. And one of the great things about great edge rushers, and we see this with Von Miller all the time, is he will use the same move over and over and over again in multiple plays in one series, only to on the next series do the same thing and then add a counter to it and win. Right. Everybody knows that big spin move he had on Joe Staley, but he set that up with him with multiple plays before that. He set that spin move up. He got it to where Joe Staley overset on the pass block, opened it up, and made that spin move that made Joe Staley look silly. So that's where it comes down to, is just Bradley Chubbs. He's not doing these things that you want to see from an edge, and it's disappointing. And I think that the conversation that Bronco fans should be having and should be realizing is, as much as I like the pick, I always question the value of Bradley Chubb at 5 overall, because when you compare him to other edge rushers who have gone that high in that top 5, he wasn't on the same tier as them. No. Myles Garrett was a tier higher. Von Miller, the Bosas, like all these edge rushers that go there, they're tier 1 edge rusher prospects. Bradley Chubb was right there in tier 2 and got taken at 5th overall.
Yeah.
So comes to the question, I saw somebody mention about a mistake of passing on what the Bills offered, and kind of hard to disagree with that. They had a chance for a couple first-round picks, but they took it on Bradley Chubb, and hopefully he's able to bounce back, but it's not promising.
Well, and I want to go back to what you were talking about, and what I was specifically talking about is as far as converting speed to power and him not knowing the kind of pass rusher that he wants to be. Whenever you watched him in the running game, especially in the first 4 games of last year where he was absolutely dominant, this is before he tore his ACL, and even going back to his rookie year in 2018, that speed to power conversion and the ability to shed blockers like that really helped him in the running game. And this year, we're not seeing his aspect in the running game a lot. Do you think that him trying to be that true bendy speed rusher is having an effect on him in the running game and creating those tackles for loss? Like, I just came as an epiphany to me while you were talking about that. Like, him trying to bend around and not really being aggressive the way that he is used to, like the way that we've watched him be over the first 2 years of his career, it's not translating to the running game at all.
It's not, and I think that's exactly right. When watching him, I've noticed a lot more of him sitting back and playing a little bit of off when it comes to his defense against the run. He is keeping offensive linemen at bay, and he's not trying to charge through them like he normally does. And I think that comes down to him trying to be more finesse than power, and that's just not how he's built. And I'm starting to wonder if that is a result of the mental block of that ACL. There's been some debate going around that I've seen over the last few years that it's hard to ignore, that players who in the trenches more so, players who play with power tend to see those injuries to their knees and stuff a little bit more. So kind of wonder if he's trying to sit there and keep that from happening again.
Yeah. I'm going to grab this from Stu Meat really fast. We got a super sticker. We can't see it on our end of things, but I do know that John came to us in the private chats, and it's a super sticker that says Bravo. So Stu, we appreciate you for that. Now, Eric, I'm going to go to my last question for Bradley Chubb before we move this conversation forward. And
real quick, we actually got a second super sticker from Stu Meat as well. So, and we thank you for both of those, Stu Meat.
Does John have an update on that? No, there's not another one. So we apologize for that, but thank you, Stu. We do appreciate that. Now, yes. I'm going to get you to the
first one was one that says Bravo. The second one was a pair that's fist bumping.
Oh, okay. So the Broncos have a big decision, and this is kind of looking forward, Eric, and a little bit of projection. And based on what we know now, Bradley Chubb's going to be heading into year 4 next year, and that brings on the deadline for the 5th-year option. And there are some changes to the 5th-year option. This was actually something that I learned earlier today, Eric. I know you know this, but I'm going to educate some of our listeners here today. Prior to this season, which has now the new collective bargaining agreement, a player that was presented the 5th-year option, that money was guaranteed for injury only, meaning that a team could deny, they could come back and then rescind that 5th-year option so long as the player wasn't hurt and so long as that actually happened before the first day of the league year. Now with this year and the new collective bargaining agreement, that 5th-year option is fully guaranteed. And to go a little bit further into this, a player that has a Pro Bowl on their original first 3 seasons will earn the full transition tag tender calculated at their position in 2021 as their salary in 2022. And a player that has 2 Pro Bowls or multiple Pro Bowls will have the franchise tag value. And that's a big differentiation here. Now, going to Bradley Chubb specifically, who does have the 1 Pro Bowl in his rookie season, if he's evaluated as a defensive end, his transition tag value would be $14.4 million on his 5th-year option. If he's evaluated as a linebacker, he will be evaluated at a $13.071 million transition tag, which would be his 5th-year option. Now, Eric, based on what we know now and the fact that Bradley Chubb does have those 2 big injuries to his knee in his career, and he's not playing necessarily the greatest, what is your opinion? Do the Broncos need to extend that 5th-year option to him, or should they let it kind of ride and see how it comes out in year 4?
And before I get to that, I want to get to Flippin' Booch because he actually raises a good question.
Yes.
He asks, isn't Chubb the same position as Vaughn? Yes, technically he is. And he also asks, isn't Chubb supposed to speed around linemen and not rush through them? So there's different roles. There's different styles. And Von Miller, say, is the Russell Wilson of edges. Bradley Chubb is the Josh Allen. They have similarities, but they're not the same style. Bradley Chubb is not the athlete. He's not the speed guy that Von Miller is. Von Miller can do with getting around edges because he's got that speed. He's got that burst. I mean, his first step is amazing. And he's just got that ability to go around them. He can go through them, but he's better going around them. Bradley Chubb's the opposite. Bradley Chubb is much better converting his burst off the line into power to strike the offensive lineman, get him on his heels, and drive through him, and then eventually shed the tackle and sacking the quarterback. He's not as good going around him. He doesn't have the flexibility in his ankles and his hips to turn the corner, to get at that proper bend, a 45-degree angle, and get after the quarterback. That's just not what he is. That's not what you want him doing. So, I mean, another thing is, like, you don't want Jerry Jeudy playing a Clayton Sutton role and a Clayton Sutton playing a Jerry Jeudy role. It's all same positions, but just different styles, different roles. Now, to get to your question is, I'm going to kind of stand on the fence with this one because there's 2 different ways I'm looking at this. Based on his play, just his play, nothing else. Based on his play, the answer is no. You do not pick up that 5th-year option. He hasn't earned it yet. He hasn't been playing good enough to earn it. He hasn't been playing good enough to do that. And then you have the medical stuff that is just, all right, yeah, that's kind of concerning, especially with the guarantee no matter what. I mean, if he has that mental block of him not being able to play, do you really want to pay him that much, guarantee that much to him, and have him still have this block? But on the flip side of it, the Broncos aren't in a position to pass up on probably the 2nd most valuable position in the NFL, an edge, and a deal that's pretty much a fair deal for a middle of the pack edge rusher, which is right about where I think Chubb is. He's right about middle of the pack. We just want more from the 5th overall pick.
Yep.
With their ownership situation, with the lack of funds that they have to pay players, that passing up on him, unless they get another young edge rusher, like in the draft early or something like that, and they're keeping Von Miller, they can't afford to not take that 5th-year option of Chubb. Yes, it's a good amount of money, but it's still right there with what you're going to be paying somebody else. And it's just, you don't have to worry about negotiations. You could just say, hey, we're picking up your 5th-year option, and you have him for an extra year.
Yeah. The one thing, and this is something that Carl brought up in our group chat, because I posed this question to everybody in our private group chat at Mile High Huddle, and I asked the exact same thing. And Carl came up and he says, the valuation and the contracts of the top, 5-10 edge rushers in the NFL is way more than that fifth-year option. And look at what we're seeing with 72, Garrett Bowles right now. And the Broncos are probably regretting not extending that fifth-year option, having that fifth year of cost control where they have an opportunity to, hey, prove it at this number. Now the Broncos are going to go into a negotiation with Garrett Bowles, and they have to pay him, they could have had him at 11.5, I think it was, next year, something like that. But now they have to go into this year and they're going to have to say, well, we have to pay you $17 million. Like that's what you're playing at. And Garrett Bowles has all right to ask that. If they went into next year and said, hey, we're going to give you the fifth year option and then extend you after that fifth year option still plays into it as far as a cost controlled aspect in that concern.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Now,
so
with
I want to address this comment. Is a 4-3 defensive end, which is what Chubb was mostly in college, is the same thing as a 3-4 rush linebacker. You're not changing positions. You're just having them play from instead of a 2-point or 3-point stance, you're having them play in a 2-point stance. They didn't put him out of position. They put him out of position he played very well at in college, just not what he did the most in college. They didn't change his position. He's just an edge. The NFL's got to do away with defensive end and linebackers and rush linebackers. Those guys are edges. Guys capable of playing in a 4-3 defensive end or a 3-4 rush linebacker. That's what Bradley Chubb is. Defensive ends to me are big guys who are playing that 4-eye technique. Guys like Shelby Harris, Derek Wolfe, those are defensive ends. They are on the defensive line. And if you're guys 280 plus pounds, if you're like Chubb, Von Miller, Khalil Mack, Josh Allen, the Panthers rusher,
Brian
Chandler
Burns.
Jones, guys like that, you're an edge. You play the edge.
So the thing that I want you guys to kind of look at is, and as Eric says, you're playing on the edge of the offensive line, but look at the technique. And Eric and I broke this down for you guys a few months ago. Technique alignment. And Bradley Chubb as a 4-3 defensive end at North Carolina State was primarily as a 7 or a 6 technique, lined up face up against the tackle or shade to the outside. He's not playing a 9 technique. He's still playing that 6 technique, but instead of having his hand in the dirt, he's standing at a 2-point stance. It's the same technique, same position. He's asked to do the exact same thing as a player. It's just every now and then he does play a wide 9. And one of the worst plays of Bradley Chubb against the Raiders was him playing as a wide 9, where Brandon Parker just guided him to the ground. It was atrocious play by Chubb. Richie Rich, you say, explain that one, Lance. Come back to me on that. Now, Eric, there's something that's been going around here in Broncos country, and I want to wrap up the discussion on Bradley Chubb here. Based on him being drafted at the 5th overall pick in 2018 and based on the production and what we know now, is it okay to kind of consider Bradley Chubb a bust for what he is?
I wouldn't say he's a bust, but I definitely think that he's trending that way.
So here you go. Raul coming in and says, John, pull that back up. Raul says that he's not worth the 5th pick. It's a bad pick. I don't see any explosive or power on him. I don't necessarily agree with the second part of that, but he's not worth the 5th overall pick. Like, plain and simple. At this point, and then that sucks. That sucks. I hate to say that, but at the same time, it's also very true. You missed a season, and right now he's not playing as that true Batman. It took him 4 or 5 games before that the LA Rams game he had in his rookie year, had 3 sacks, and then after that he kind of went on a tear. But for the first 4 or 5 weeks, he was just not effective. Look at guys that are, like Eric said earlier, look at guys like Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Like, you've got Myles Garrett, who's been a premier pass rusher, Khalil Mack, Von Miller as well. Like, Brad Chubb has not been that kind of a player at all, especially without Von Miller on the other side.
And when you're looking at the draft, you got to look at them at tiers, and you got to look at guys at other positions. And from previous years, in Bradley Chubb, he wasn't on that same tier as those other edge rushers.
Oh, so Richie Rich coming back and says, "How is the where did it go? How is the edge position not a need?" I don't agree with that. I actually think that the edge position is a big need because Von Miller in his contract next year, plain and simple.
There's a big need because of nobody's performing.
Well, that's also true as well. But
doesn't even matter with Von Miller.
Well, but going into that argument there as well, Von Miller's not playing right now, but he might not be a part of the Broncos team next year at all because of his contract. Like he might not even be on the team.
That's why my first mock draft of the year I had Gregory Rousseau out as the first round pick for the Broncos.
And with the high upside, he's so raw, but man, he's so crazy athletic. That guy is so awesome, so much fun to watch. All right, now let's get away from this for a minute. Well, actually, let's put that conversation to bed. Bradley Chubb, you guys heard our takes on that. Come back at us, get back at us at Twitter, at Sanderson MHH for Eric at Erick Trickel.
Wait, I gotta ask though. Are we giving up on Bradley Chubb too early, or do we need to exhibit more patience with him?
Oh man, you had to go there.
I did.
Oh, base case. This is the dude. Look at that profile picture. He says, "I'm all in on Zach Wilson if we get a top 10 pick. I think he's the clear quarterback 3 in the draft. But Lance feels like an Elway pick." Speaking to North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance, not Lance Sanderson.
I hope not you.
Hey, you know what? I actually had a cannon when I played baseball. Man, I could throw a long ways. I have a baseball arm, but I'm not a quarterback. Yes, I could, actually. I actually could. I disagree with you on this one, base case, just because I don't think that Trey Lance is an Elway pick. I think that if the Broncos were looking at a quarterback, Zach Wilson would be the guy. It'd be either Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence. I don't even think Justin Fields would be a John Elway pick. And the reason I say this, and Eric actually has a good point with this, and I'll let you elaborate on this, is where Zach Wilson's playing. Specifically, geographically. I'm not talking about the school that he's playing at. Geographically. Eric, go ahead and break this down for us.
Elway likes players who plays at altitude. It's why Utah has been a big pipeline for the Broncos. They like players who play at altitude. Zach Wilson, he plays at altitude. Now, I can get why Trey Lance feels like an Elway pick. He's that big guy with the size. He's got a good deep arm. But the issue is that he's not hitting those deep passes. And I think Elway kind of learned his lesson a little bit with going for the big guy with the deep arm, especially if Drew Lock ends up not being the guy, if he doesn't step up over these last few games. Between him and Paxton Lynch, I think he would have learned his lesson about going for the big guy with the big arm. And I think that Zach Wilson, he's got plenty of arm for him. He's got the brains. He's got the combination of everything. And I think that Sam Darnold was the dream of John Elway.
Yeah,
I think that is the quarterback over the last few years that he has wanted the most. And I think that Zach Wilson is closer to Sam Darnold including everything, not just one physical trait or anything. Regarding everything, I think that Zach Wilson is closer to Sam Darnold than Trey Lance is.
Well, I know.
And then you add in that altitude fact.
Well, and I know James's comparison here, and everyone wants to say the Mormon Manziel because he plays at BYU, and I don't agree with that. I actually am more towards James's comparison, James Campbell here at milehighhuddles.com as well. He says he's the Mormon Aaron Rodgers. And I can kind of see that, where he likes to play off platform a little bit, has a big arm, can make all the throws. I can see that. The one that I actually see is a more athletic Justin Herbert, quite honestly. And you want to talk about a guy that John Elway loved was Justin Herbert coming out of Oregon. You said Sam Darnold is the guy that he coveted the most. I would argue Justin Herbert.
No, Sam Darnold was the price. Justin Herbert was second. Sam Darnold was the price.
Okay. And there's actually a possibility with the Jets right now trending towards the number 1 overall pick is Sam Darnold may end up as a Bronco, and there's some murmurs going around the NFL that is potentially going to happen, by the way. If you listen to multiple different people across the Broncos media network, specifically Benjamin Albright.
Booker came in with $1.99. Does Elway trade for Darnold if New York drafts Trevor? I think it's a high possibility, and I think that the biggest thing is Adam Gase has to go, which is fully expected, and then Douglas will need to stay in as GM.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
The one thing that I will say as far as that goes, and I didn't want to talk about him, but we'll just throw this quick out there. It all depends on the next 7 games and what Drew Lock does as the quarterback. He still has an opportunity to win this audition and win his next year in 2021. But based on what we're seeing right now, it's not looking good. And my personal opinions on Drew Lock are out there. Go find them if you want them. I'm not going to just talk about it now. But if Drew Lock continues on his trajectory right now and the Jets do draft Trevor Lawrence and Sam Darnold does become available, that would be an avenue that I would take, is to send a second, maybe a future pick as well, to go get Sam Darnold and let Darnold and Lock compete in 2021 and then readdress the situation at the end of that season. That's my personal take on that, but I digress.
Just a couple things is flipping boots. I hope Lock develops so we stop talking about QBs. As we said last week, is we hope he develops as well so we don't have to keep talking about quarterbacks. Denver has to have their quarterback of the future. I hope it's Drew Lock, because then they can use these draft picks elsewhere to better the team overall instead of having to continue to search for him. And then Charlie Beagle says Elway really wanted Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was the top quarterback that Elway ever wanted. When I was mentioning Sam Darnold as the prize, I was just meaning in recent years, not going back to when he first started, is the biggest thing. And then the last one real quick is Cruz on 26 says, you would think that Elway would like Josh Allen. That's actually a good point. Is Elway, he liked him but didn't love him, and Trey Lance has drawn some comparison, not a lot, in style and everything like that to, and where he's at as a quarterback, as a thrower, to Josh Allen. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Now, Eric, I want to ask you this question really quick before I grab Malcolm Brown's super chat and then move our conversation forward here. It actually goes back to the 2018 NFL draft, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if Bradley Chubb wasn't available, wasn't Josh Allen one of the targets there? I know Minkah Fitzpatrick was, and they were actually looking for a trade back to go get Minkah, but Josh Allen was actually on the table. Am I wrong on that?
From what I heard, Josh Allen was an option if they moved down.
Okay.
But the issue was Bills wanted to move up for Josh Allen.
Right.
So that was just the issue there. And that's just based on what I heard. And then real quick, I want to throw this out there too, because I've seen a lot of talk about Garrett Bowles and being patient with him. And you're not wrong. Denver was patient with Garrett Bowles, but they almost weren't. They tried trading him this offseason. Yeah. The issue was that they just couldn't find another tackle. They tried replacing him. They could not find another tackle option out there to replace him with. Their hope was Elijah Wilkinson would stay healthy and be able to compete and take over the left tackle job this year. So, patience panned out for him. But the other factor with this is Denver wasn't competing the last few years. They were still trying to find their quarterback of the future. They hoped Case Keenum and Joe Flacco could help them, but they were in a far more rebuilding mode then than they planned on being this year.
Yeah.
And the last point is Garrett Bowles, despite as much hate as he got, he showed progression from year 1 to year 2, and obviously and to year 3, and so on and so forth. He showed that progression. So when I make the shoddy comment at Drew Lock about not being patient with Chubb and everything like that, is Drew Lock hasn't shown the growth that's needed to deserve more time.
Yeah, Bradley Chubb hasn't shown the growth that's needed to deserve more time also, in my opinion. One quick draft question here from Malcolm Brown before we move on to Cortland Sutton, the rest of the 2018 NFL draft. Should a replacement for Jarrell Casey, Shelby Harris, and DeMarcus Walker be drafted in rounds 1 through 3? Hashtag Eric's tie-dye fund, by the way, because he's the Homer, Alaska resident for you. Short answer, yes.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you would like to. I'm actually working on another mock draft. That'll be the last one during the season, and and as much as I'd like to in my mock draft, I don't have an interior defensive lineman in the first 3 rounds. But that is where the cream of the crop is for this year's defensive line class, and you would love to be able to snag one. It's just with how things fell in my mock draft, it didn't. I mean, there's so many options there. Jalen Twyman from Pittsburgh. There's the Stills brothers from West Virginia. Just so much. There's a lot of guys. That's the cream of the crop, as I said.
Yeah. All right. So back to the 2018 NFL draft. You have the Broncos' second round pick, number 40 overall, Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver, and we all know. Obviously, this year he's on the injured reserve, torn ACL, and it's a shame that we can't watch him grow into what was quickly becoming a top wide receiver. He was going to be a top 10, top 7 wide receiver, massive hype coming into the season. 117 career receptions for 1,882 yards, 10 total touchdowns. The biggest thing here is his yards per catch at 16.1 yards per catch and his average depth of target at 14.4 over the course of his career. In 2019, let's just go back to that really fast. He had 72 total receptions for 1,111 or 12 yards, 6 touchdowns and a 15.4 yard per catch average. Now, Eric, it's obvious that the offense is missing Sutton as a whole, and it's disappointing that we don't get to see him. But what is the biggest aspect of his talents that this team is missing right now?
So when it comes to Sutton, obviously, talking about Drew Lock a little bit, losing Sutton does hurt Drew Lock. We saw last year the reliance that Drew Lock has on Clayton Sutton, and he just hasn't. Well, Tim Patrick has had those moments. He hasn't really found that guy. But it's just so many ways. that not having Sutton just hurts his offense in general. That big target those 50-50 balls, the reliability of Sutton. And because he had a lot of drops at his rookie year, but he put in work to better his hands and became far more reliable. It's just there isn't one single way that the loss of Sutton doesn't hurt or hurts more or anything like that. It's just so many different ways. And when people want to find a defense for Drew Lock, that is the one reasonable argument they have, is how much losing Clayton Sutton has hurt this offense and hurt Drew Lock.
Yeah. The biggest thing to me, and you said it earlier, is his ability to go and get those 50-50 balls. And I want to correct you on this because it's not 50-50 with him. It's more like 80-20. And there was at one point last year, and this is with 3 different quarterbacks, by the way. I saw that comment. NorCal91 threw that up there in the comment stream as well. 3 different quarterbacks. He had Joe Flacco, Brandon Allen, and then Drew Lock at the end of the season. But go back to that Minnesota game one time. And through that point, with 2 different quarterbacks, Clayton Sutton was like 9 for 9 in contested catches, contested catch situations, specifically on the sideline. That guy is a freaking monster at the catch point. And his high point is one of the best in the NFL. And that's one of the reasons why he was quickly becoming one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL, is because of that as well. Now, that big kind of a body, he's not the fastest guy ever, but he does have an incredible nuance in route running, which is a drastic and marked improvement from him coming out of SMU. And that's probably one of the reasons why he wasn't drafted in the first round and he fell to the second round, because he wasn't a nuanced route runner. He was not very good. That SMU route tree is terrible. So to see him grow from year 1 to year 2, increase that ability to go catch those contested targets, and then also be an incredible route runner and focus and catch a lot of balls, that to me is the biggest thing, because that big aspect where Tim Patrick has not necessarily failed, but has really failed to step up in that role, takes so much attention away from the middle of the field and Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant. And that's the biggest thing, is Clayton Sutton can draw some double coverage, some bracket coverage, and open up a whole bunch of different things. That's the biggest aspect of him being gone for this Broncos offense. Now, to kind of piggyback off of that, and I kind of ruined it for you, seeing the production with 3 different quarterbacks, is it fair to say that we could have seen the same sort of success with Locke this year, despite the issues with the offense as a whole?
That's hard to say, because it's a reasonable argument that not having Clayton Sutton hurts Drew Lock. We saw his reliability from that really helped Lock last year. But the thing is when you watch Lock, you see his regression. He's not making reads. It's just a lot of things that you want an NFL quarterback to do that he's not doing. And part of that problem is that Rick Scangarello last year, his offense was a lot of 3-step drops, one read and throw. That's what that offense was. And Denver didn't like that. It was very passive. It wasn't aggressive enough. And the biggest thing is that it wasn't asking Drew Lock to be an actual NFL quarterback, not reading the whole field. That's why they fired him. So it's hard to say, because Pat Shurmur's asking him to read the whole field, and he's not. He's showing these issues not being able to do that. But then you wonder, would the reliability of Sutton out there, being that guy, even if he's not the first option, having that guy that would be able to pull Lock's eyes away from the first read and trust Sutton to go make that catch.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And one thing that I want to kind of counter with that was the reliance on Drew Lock. And this was coming out of training camp, and even going back to last year, Drew Lock really did rely on Clayton Sutton. And there was a lot of times where he forced the ball into Clayton Sutton. And with the way that Lock is really keying in on one read right now, is having Sutton going to be how do I got to word this? Is having Sutton gonna help him with that because he already has that reliance on Sutton as the one read, or is that with him being in the field, is his first read being Judy and then his eyes turning gonna actually happen? You understand what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, and again, that's just the question of it is that we won't be able to answer because Cortland Sutton barely played this year, and we really don't know. And that, again, that is the one reasonable defense that people have for wanting to give Drew Lock more time. But it still comes down to the fact that even without Sutton, Drew Lock has to show more. He's showing regression instead of stepping up. But it's just who knows what it would be with Sutton out there.
Yeah, Charlie Beagle brings up. I was going to say Charlie Beagle brings up a pretty decent point, and we'll get to this here in just a little bit. And it's not necessarily 100% true, but I see where you're coming from. Looking for Hamilton first. Let me go grab these super chats because I know you were going to go there.
For whoever the deep read is first.
That really is it. It's the deep read, and Deshaun Hamilton has seen that. Base Gaze coming back in here. Thanks for that, man. We appreciate you. Everyone lauded Elway for the 2018 draft, but was it really that good? That's what we're trying to break down for you guys here. Sutton was a hit, and maybe Chubb and Josie Jewell disagree slightly. The rest were poor. That's really kind of a good way to segue into the Broncos' next pick in Royce Freeman. Let me grab that really fast. Royce Freeman has really been kind of a mixed bag. His rookie season, he was running really hard, and then he had that ankle injury, and it really kind of hindered his progress. And then we saw the explosion of Phillip Lindsay, who we're not going to talk about tonight, by the way. But it's really kind of his best work is coming in the passing game here of late, because that's really kind of the role that he has been relegated to, if that at all, period. Career stats, 284 carries for 1,096 yards and 8 total touchdowns, 66 receptions for 401 yards and a score on a 3.9 yards per carry average. And like I said, as far as him running hard and showing good vision and some patience and stuff like that early in the season before that ankle injury, was it the injury that caused him to fall out of favor, or just Lindsay's explosive play potential as the hot hand towards the end of the season in 2018? I got some hard questions for you, dude.
So I'm just going to go with my whole stance about it. I never liked the Royce Freeman pick. That was always the worst pick to me in that draft. I had serious questions because he had some injuries that would hinder him in the NFL, even once he's over them. He got hurt his rookie year, and he's never lived up to that. But the biggest thing is, dang you, San Francisco. Dang you, San Francisco.
Fred Warner.
Dang you, San Francisco. I've heard pretty reliably that Fred Warner was going to be the pick, but San Francisco took him before it, and they went to Royce Freeman. It's just... It's a good thing he's showing up as a reliable receiver, but that's it. Yeah. Like, he's not reliable as a blocker. He's not reliable as a runner. He's a receiving running back, and that's about it, which really made me question why they brought in Melvin Gordon. Like, I guess the red zone ability, but whatever. I digress. Is Royce Freeman is a big reason why, and the next pick too, Isaac Yiadom, and they're just big reasons why the 2018 draft class, as lauded as it was, and I love the Yiadom pick, and that was a big miss by me, was why it's failed, is those two guys right there. Is when you're drafting a running back in the third round, you want him to be the guy. He got beat out by the undrafted free agent. You have that third round cornerback. You want him to be at least your number 2 corner. Denver just traded him.
Yeah. So going back to to Royce Freeman and the whole Melvin Gordon situation, and I understand the Broncos and Pat Shurmur specifically, I think, wanted to bring in Melvin Gordon because of his prowess as a receiving back. But watching Freeman back in 2019, he was actually pretty decent as a receiver, especially when they lined him out wide. And go back to that Jacksonville game where they hit him on some quick slants, and he was pretty effective there. So knowing that, and also knowing the struggles of Phillip Lindsay, who has 2 catches on 3 total targets, and actually I think it's more drops than that, to be quite honest. Why haven't the Broncos tried to use Royce Freeman in the receiving game this season?
Man, we don't need to get into trying to use more running backs when we can use Phillip Lindsay.
That's fair.
I mean, it's hard because Phillip Lindsay is dealing with a lot of injuries, and his play against the Raiders was really bad, and he had some struggles against the Falcons, so it's understandable a little bit. And then, of course, you look at the score and why they had to go away from the running game. So it's easy to see why. And then, the Chiefs game, they were relying on Phillip Lindsay only to have him get knocked out of the game. It's hard to figure out a way to use Royce Freeman more outside of lining him up outside at receiver. But when you have KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy and Locke's Buddy and Deshaun Hamilton and Tim Patrick, you don't really use that. Yeah. And you don't really want to use him when Melvin Gordon, despite all of his issues, offers up a little bit more as a receiving running back than Royce Freeman does.
Well, and also as a pass protector too. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, so you just hurt your offense. You limit it because Royce Freeman, he's not going to stand up block because that's not what he's going to do. He's not a big threat to run.
Right.
That would be a good way to use a late handoff. Catch defense off guard, but.
All right, I'm gonna grab this really fast from Kenneth Booker. He says we need to go after Dak and draft the O-line in the first. Thanks for the super, Kenneth. We appreciate that. I completely disagree. First off, because I don't think Dak Prescott leaves Dallas. I think that they're going to hand him all the money. Drafting O-line in the first round.
Real quick, with how Dallas has played without him, they're handing him all the money.
Yeah, he's going to get paid lots and lots of monies, and the Broncos can't afford that. First off, they don't have the cap space to be able to afford that, and then also improve the roster on top of that. They don't have the cash flow to give him the signing bonus that the Cowboys are going to be able to give him. And also, with the way that he played, especially in the beginning of this year, I think there was a stat that I saw, and it might have been before the Raiders game, where Dak Prescott has missed 2 games this season. He still has more passing yards than Drew Lock. Seriously, it's rough.
That was from me.
Well, yeah.
I shared it in the private chat. Yeah.
That's all over the place. Zach Kelberman wrote about it on Heavy.com covering the Dallas Cowboys as well. So anyways, that's the one thing we'll set aside on this one. Drafting the offensive line in the first. If the Broncos have an opportunity to go get Penei Sewell, sure.
Yeah, it depends on who's available.
Yeah, that's very true. Penei Sewell, if say the Broncos do struggle out the rest of the season, they lose out or whatever, they end up with a top 10 pick, top 5 pick, something like that. Penei Sewell is available. Absolutely, you go get that guy because he's him and Garrett Bowles. If you could figure out a way to move Garrett Bowles to the right side or do whatever you got to do to develop, get rid of Juwan James, whatever you want to do. Penei Sewell's a legit kind of an offensive lineman, but I'm not going to go out and try to draft a right guard. And if you want him as Garrett Bowles' replacement, that's fine, but I'd rather go extend Garrett Bowles and just roll with that on a prove-it deal and then reevaluate the situation there. Because Juwan James is getting paid a lot of money, and they can't get out from underneath that contract this next year. So he's going to be playing right tackle. And when he does play, he plays really well.
The biggest thing that they need is they need a developmental guy or even a guy who can step in when James gets hurt next year and decides that he doesn't want to play for extra games because he's got a little boo-boo. They got to find a guy who can step in for that. And as much as I love Penei Sewell and he would make a lot of sense, he makes more sense if they let Garrett Bowles walk.
Yep.
I think that the prime position for them would be to trade down, depending on where they're picking. If they're picking in the top 10, to trade down a target like Dylan Radins or
my boy Samuel Cosmi. There you go.
No. And not Alex Leatherwood. I can't remember what the other one is. Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. If they want to go get one of those two after a slight trade down or something, and if Darrisaw continues playing the way he has, he could be a top 10 pick. He's really pushing for that number 2 tackle. Then yeah, you go for that. But it's just if they bring Bowles back and they have James back, you're looking for a guy to replace James in 2020. You're looking for him to replace him next year again when James gets his boo boo and decides not to play.
Yeah. My thing is if the Broncos are in position and like I said, if the Broncos lose out and they're in the top 5 pick, that means Drew Lock has failed critically. And that means that they're in position to go and draft a top quarterback. And that is the pick. Until you have a quarterback, you don't have one. Plain and simple.
Until you know you have a quarterback, you need a quarterback. And thinking you may have a quarterback isn't having a quarterback.
No. All right, so getting back to the 2018 NFL Draft, we'll wrap this up here really quickly. Isaac Yiadom, we're not really going to talk about him. 99th overall for the Broncos. He was the second of the Broncos' third-rounders that year. Traded to the
He was
New
the
York
bad
Giants
for Big Fangio scheme.
And that's the biggest thing, is that Yadam was picked under Vance Joseph and did kind of fit with Vance Joseph and what he wanted to do and had some rookie struggles, but there was some promise there. And then Vance Joseph got fired. In comes Vic Fangio, changed the scheme. Yadam's not necessarily a zone corner. He's a press man corner, and he doesn't line up with what Vic Fangio wants to do. Going into year 3, the Broncos had no use for him. They thought Devontae Harris, who actually played marginally better, I think, maybe last year over Isaac Yadam. Still, Yadam got benched, and then Devontae Harris sucked, and then Yadam came back in and sucked even worse. So that's why Yadam's not on this team anymore, plain and simple. Now, is that his biggest downfall? Is that he wasn't a scheme fit? I don't necessarily think so, because he got traded to the Giants, and he's just been ho-hum over that way as well. That's a bad third-round pick, period, for the Broncos. It doesn't matter the scheme change or nothing. You want a third-round pick to be a long-lasting, impactful player for your team, period. And Yadam obviously has not been, and he's like not even in the NFL, really. He's barely even playing for the Giants, and they're terrible, especially defensively.
Yeah.
So now this is an interesting one. We're going to go to the 4th round, beginning of the 4th round, 106 overall, the first of the Broncos' 2 4th-round picks this year. Josey Jewell, linebacker. He spent the majority of his time as a special teams contributor for the first couple of years. But with the injuries at the position this year and the lack of bringing in a linebacker to compete as well, he's been forced into a starting role in 2020 where he's played pretty decently, especially as a run defender. Career stats, 164 total tackles, 104 solo with 4 passes defensed, 3.5 sacks. 2 of those are coming this year, along with 68 total tackles. But Eric, the biggest thing with Josey Jewell is that we all knew that he isn't the most athletic linebacker, especially in that draft. He's not even the most athletic linebacker on the team, arguably, which leads to his coverage issues. And he has been bad in coverage. Despite that, how has he performed throughout this season?
Jewell, he's getting a lot more hate than he deserves. I mean, he hasn't been terrible. He's been the better of the 2 linebackers, actually, when you actually break him down. He's been better as a run defender, and he's been better in coverage. The only thing that Johnson's been better at is as a blitzer. It's just the expectations for him were so high, and I had serious concerns for him. He's very tight in the hips, and you see that. I mean, his issues in coverage that pop up are because he's tight in the hips. He's not fluid. He's not a good athlete, and it's just he's exploitable, and he's playing with good instincts to help cover up for it. But I mean, he's a guy that you prefer him to be a number 3 linebacker in an odd man front. But Denver's stuck playing with him. They felt comfortable enough cutting Todd to cut Todd and him to cut Todd Davis. So that speaks to what they thought about him. But I mean, it's one of those picks that, like, for a 4th-round pick, all right, this is an all right pick. I mean, just from that factor. But when you look at some of the other guys that were taken not long after him, I'm pretty sure it was not long after him. There's a couple guys that it's like leaves you scratching your head a little bit.
Yeah. Jewell, honestly, I was pretty impressed with him as far as a cerebral player. He does a really good job identifying what's going on in front of him. His athletic ability is not enough to be able to turn and run and stuff, but he does a really good job scraping through the trash as a run defender, identifying what's going on. And they're using him a lot as a blitzer right now. 37 total blitzes this year. Eric, what do you evaluate him as far as a blitzer, and especially as a pass blitzer, where he's got 2 sacks this year? He's playing pretty decently.
He is. I mean, he's not a bad blitzer by any means. Johnson is just a better blitzer than him.
Right.
And how he wins is he wins with being smart. Yeah. He outthinks his opponent, and he sets them up, and he goes to a counter. He does everything that what we were saying Bradley Chubb should do, isn't doing. Jewell's doing it. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think that his best position in the NFL would have been in a 4-3 base as that Sam linebacker. But, I mean, we're making do with him, and it's working out for him. I like what he does as a pass rusher. Again, it's all because of smarts. And the issue is that times when he gets the hands on him, he just gets shut down. Yeah. But hey.
It's kind of rough when you don't have functional strength and also don't have functional athleticism, and then get your hands on, like, get an offensive guard's hands on you where you don't have the ability to scrape and release. Muhammad Badri coming in here with a $5 super sticker. John has it as a how's it going pair. Thank you, John. We appreciate that. Thank you, Muhammad, for joining in with us tonight. We do appreciate that. Let's see here. Couple more minutes. We got about 5 minutes left before we got to get out of here. So we're going to move on from Josey Jewell because I pretty much got everything that is there. Now, let's get back to Drew Lock's best friend and Deshaun Hamilton, who is oddly being used as a deep threat in this offense, which is mind-boggling to me. I don't understand why.
The biggest question about Pat Shurmur, it's not that Locke doesn't fit his offense. It's how he's using the receivers.
Yeah.
It's just so wrong. Like how he's using KJ Hamler is how he should be using Hamilton, and how he's using Deshaun Hamilton is how he should be using KJ Hamler.
Oh yeah,
it's just so bothersome. And then the comment that he made about the running backs and everything like that. I mean, I get that they had to go away from the running game, but it was still kind of a stupid comment to make. Like Pat Shurmur has plenty of issues. The issue with Locke isn't his offense, but I mean, it's just, you got to learn to use your guys better. Deshaun Hamilton, real quick to get him out here so we can talk briefly about the Dolphins game.
Yeah,
I don't know why Locke has such a repertoire with him. I don't get why Pat Shurmur is using him the way he is. He's never offered up been a deep threat. And I mean, he's a very lesser version of Jerry Jeudy with his route running ability. I mean, he's a guy that you want to be using 5-10 yards. And it's just, but it all comes down to, it's like, if you're a receiver, catch the dang ball.
That's the biggest thing. And with the inconsistencies that he's had as far as catching the football. I mean, go back, week 1 last year? This is going to throw you back for a minute. Week 1 last year against the Oakland Raiders, Deshaun Hamilton had a slant route for a touchdown that would have put the Broncos within 1 score and kept them competitive in that football game. And it hit him right square in the hands, and he dropped it stone cold right in front of Clayton Sutton. It was just a terrible drop. And you've seen that through the course of Deshaun Hamilton's career here in Denver. Now, I do got one thing here. Do you like Deshaun's skill set, first off, for the Jedi? And secondly, is it the drop issues with Deshaun Hamilton that's been the biggest detractor to his effectiveness in this Broncos offense over the course of his career? Or is it quarterbacks just not targeting him? Because he's a really good route runner.
He's getting open. I think it is the drops. I think that the quarterbacks aren't trusting him. We know that was the case with Joe Flacco. After he dropped that touchdown in the season opener against the Raiders last year, Joe Flacco barely looked his way. He wasn't a factor because Joe Flacco could not trust him. And he had another drop in that game too, or the game after, and it just didn't help. Like, drops were the big issue.
Yeah. All right. So one last question before we get to Miami. We're going to run just a little bit long. Sorry, Chad. We do apologize for that. If you listen to this later. One quick question regarding 2 players, and it's the same question. Royce Freeman, Deshaun Hamilton. Okay. Based on what we're seeing this year with the Broncos using Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, is this the last season for Royce Freeman in Denver? And the same thing goes to Deshaun Hamilton, because they went out and they drafted Jerry Jeudy. They went out and they drafted KJ Hamler. Is Deshaun Hamilton, and they also drafted Tyree Cleveland as well, who does more of a special teams role and fits kind of what they're using Deshaun Hamilton this year. So they've got 3 wide receivers below or right at Deshaun Hamilton's level here. Does Royce Freeman stay on next year?
No.
And does Deshaun Hamilton stay on?
No. I don't see it. I think that this is the perfect opportunity that the Broncos, they can look at upgrading those. I think that Levante Bellamy and Jeremy Cox, I think that they can effectively kick Royce Freeman off the roster at this point. And especially if they decide to roll it back with Drew Lock, if they decide to move on from Drew Lock, whatever, I think it's very clear that the Broncos aren't at a point to compete yet. And I think that specific also helps with the fact of Royce being gone and Hamilton being gone. Tyree Cleveland has far more upside, offers up more on special teams.
Yeah, he is actually Tyree Cleveland is a high quality special teams player.
And I could see Deontay Spencer being gone too, by the way.
Yeah,
we're talking about special teams.
Please, thank God. Please, can we please get Deontay Spencer off of this roster? Please let Tyree Cleveland fill that role.
Please. So real quick too, I got to throw this out there. I see a lot of people saying draft the O-line. The O-line's all to blame for Drew Lock and everything. Guys, Drew Lock is still the worst quarterback in the NFL, even when he's not pressured.
Yep. So I had a tweet out there, and this was actually before the Raiders game, but then it accentuated it even in the Raiders game. He has the 7th highest percentage of dropbacks in the NFL among quarterbacks with 200 dropbacks, so all starters. He has the 7th highest percentage of dropbacks where he has at least 2.5 seconds to throw. And on those throws, he has the lowest completion percentage in the NFL, 43.6%, by the way, 43.6%.
Yep.
On throws with 2.5 seconds to throw the ball. So,
real quick, I want to answer Jedi's question. And by the way, if you can't tell, I absolutely love the name. If you can't tell all the Star Wars stuff behind me, big Star Wars fan, love the name. And then when is the next show? We're on every Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Yeah, Dove Valley Deep Dive. So Mile High Huddle and the Huddle Up podcast group does a live stream every single day at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. The Dove Valley Deep Divers go on Friday. The schedule is as such. So Sunday following the game, you'll get the gut reaction with the Huddle Up boys, Zach and Chad. Monday, you'll get Zach and Chad as well. Tuesday, you get the Building the Broncos with Nick, Kendall, and Carl Dumler. Wednesday.
No one cares about Nick. Just Carl.
Yeah, just Carl. Wednesday is the Huddle Up boys again, Chad and Zach, excuse me. Thursday, again, the Huddle Up boys for the Mile High mailbag. Friday is Dove Valley Deep Divers with me and Eric. And then Saturday is the Mile High Insiders with Nick and Luke Patterson. Anyways, guys, you got another one?
One more thing here I want to say. Look at Josh Allen's stats compared to Drew Lock's stats as rookies, and Drew has better stats for Benjamin Albright's tweet. The thing is that's being ignored about it is, while Josh Allen progressed as a passer, is he showed that progression year 2. I understand Locke only played 5 games last year, but you still want to see the progression as a passer in year 2, no matter how many games he started as a rookie. He did have an entire season last year where he could learn and grow. Yeah, and Drew Lock isn't showing that progression, and it also can't when talking about giving these quarterbacks patience, you can't ignore the fact that Josh Allen made up for his shortcomings as a passer with his legs, which was able to buy him more patience from the Bills, which isn't the case with Drew Lock. And then you add in the fact that one was a first-round pick, one wasn't.
Yeah, I was going to say Josh Allen was the 7th overall pick that year. Drew Lock was 42nd overall.
And the same Cleveland that whiffed a block that gave us a return touchdown, yeah, he did whiff that block, but he's also made some big stops on special teams. And if you want to judge a player by one play, then I guess Drew Lock should be gone because he threw 4 interceptions against the Raiders.
Yeah. Richie coming in here with a $2 Canadian donation. Hey, I didn't realize you're up there north of the 49th, man. Well, appreciate that. Can't complete a pass when you want read one to get open. Well, if read one gets open, then yeah, I can understand that. But when read one isn't open and you bail out of a clean pocket, roll to your right, and then throw the ball out of bounds, yeah, I can totally understand that. All right, now, Eric, we're going to have to wrap this up here, guys. We're over our hour limit, so we're going to put a pause on this. Guys, get at us on Twitter. You can find me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Now, the biggest thing here, the Broncos obviously have the Miami Dolphins, a very talented team. Even though you don't know anybody on that team, they're extremely well coached. Their defense is playing an incredible level of football. They play an incredibly high level of complementary football, despite the fact that they're starting Tua Tagovailoa, who is 3-0 as a starter, by the way. The Dolphins have won 5 straight games. Eric, what are your biggest keys to victory if the Broncos want to walk out of Mile High Stadium with a win?
Pat Shurmur's got to step it up. He's got to start using KJ Hamler correctly and Deshaun Hamilton correctly. They've got to be able to attack those. They basically got to dink and dunk against this defense. Get the ball out quickly. That's on Drew Lock or Brett Rippon, no matter what, depending on who plays. Sounds like that it will be Drew Lock, though. They got to dink and dunk their way downfield. You're not going to be able to throw deep for them. Doing so, you're just going to lead to a bunch of turnovers. This is a defense that really turns the ball over, and Drew Lock has a knack of turning the ball over. So you kind of want to limit those chances and everything. Go up tempo, play that short dink and dunk passing game, because the success rate against the Miami Dolphins defense on passes under 10 yards is over 80%. So that is the best area to attack them with. It's may lead to a long game, and if you get down early, it's going to be hard to come back that way. But that is the best thing to do for your offense against their cover zero with their super disguised blitzes. Like, it's going to confuse Drew Lock, who struggles to read defenses. It's going to confuse Lloyd Cushenberry when he's trying to call out pass protection and stuff like that. It's going to be a lot of issues.
The biggest thing when you watch the Dolphins, and like I said, they're playing such an incredible level of football on the defensive side of things. They're incredibly opportunistic. They have the most takeaways in the NFL. The Broncos have the most turnovers in the NFL as well. Or if it's not the most, it's very close to the most. That amoeba defense, and Eric, you called it correctly. It's a cover zero defense, and what they are is it's incredibly disguised. They line a bunch of guys up on the line of scrimmage, and you don't know where the pressure's coming from, which is why Emmanuel Ogbah and Shaq Lawson are doing a great job on the edge, because you're identifying one-on-one blitzers and you're sending extra guys by having cover zero. That means straight man coverage across the board with no deep safety. And when you have press man coverage with with a bunch of guys at the line of scrimmage, it completely disguises everything. And with the Broncos, one of the biggest keys to them not having success offensively is the fact that they can't identify where blitzers are coming from. That lies at the feet of the quarterback in Drew Lock, who's not identifying blitzes pre-snap, and then also not identifying his Mike linebacker in front of him, which then tells Lloyd Cushenberry and Graham Glasgow and Dalton Reisner which way they need to slide their protection to. So if you have an amoeba defense where you have a bunch of guys standing at the line of scrimmage and you don't know which one is coming, this is going to be a huge pass pressure game from the Miami Dolphins. And the Broncos offensive line is in serious trouble. If they're not able to get rid of the ball quickly, pick up 7 guys with 5, which is not possible, by the way. If they can't pick up that and don't have a quick screen game or some kind of quick dump out and release route out of that, this game gets ugly so fast. And the third part of this is the Miami Dolphins special teams unit is probably the best in the league, and they have the best punt returner in the NFL right now. Jakeem Grant is absolutely spectacular. He is everything that the Broncos want Deontay Spencer to be and more, because not only is he a quality punt returner, he's a quality wide receiver as well. I mean, he doesn't get a lot of targets. He's about the KJ Hamler role in the Miami Dolphins offense. That's who Jakeem Grant is. But he has more receptions and more receiving yards and more touchdowns than Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon combined. Like the guy is playing phenomenal football, and he also has a punt return for a touchdown, has another explosive return. The Broncos are going to get beat in 2 phases easily. The Dolphins offense, I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball very well against the Broncos defense, even despite not having Jarrell Casey and Shelby Harris, Mike Purcell, and all the guys up front. They're not going to be able to move the ball, especially in the running game, and Tua is going to be a little bit confused. But if you lose defensively and you lose the special teams battle, which the Broncos have done over the last 3 weeks, there's no way the Broncos win this game. I have it as a blowout. I think it's 28-10. I think it is Miami wins this game easily. Eric, what do you got?
I think Miami wins this one pretty easily. I think on my prediction piece, in the prediction piece, I have it 31-13. I just see multiple turnovers happening. I don't see Drew Lock being able to read out this defense. I mean, this is a defense that's confusing for veteran quarterbacks that are praised for their ability to read defenses. I think he's going to make mistakes. I don't think it's going to be just Drew Lock. I doubt Pat Shurmur will finally start using his receivers right, and I doubt Tom McMahon will sit there and have a good special teams unit. It's going to show that this Broncos team is really bad. And before we get out of here, I do want to leave this. This will be my final word, by the way, so you can do all the closing stuff out of here. Is I got 2 things about it. About the tweet with Benjamin Albright, it's also convenient that he left out guys like Blake Bortles or EJ Manuel or Jake Locker, guys who were first-round picks and got patience and failed, along with the many second-round picks that got patience. I mean, look at what Jimmy Garoppolo is doing with the 49ers. I mean, he's playing all right for them, but, I mean, they could do a lot better than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
And it comes off like, at one point, is it that you're a Broncos fan and not a Drew Lock fan? Yep. Like, that's what it is for me. Is I'm a fan of the Broncos. I like Drew Lock. I hope he's the guy. But I'm not going to put him and being patient so he can possibly be the guy ahead of the Broncos being successful. That's my final word of the day. I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I got one counterpoint to this, and we'll talk about this later, I know. But what does a flash in the pan mean to you? What does having 1 or 2 games, 1 or 2 good quarters mean to you? And
it's a flash in the pan.
It's a flash in the pan, but there's been multiple guys. I mean, look at what Matt Castle did in New England in 2008. Tom Brady went down. Matt Castle led him almost to the playoffs. Matt Flynn in Green Bay had a 6-touchdown game at the end of the year and ended up getting a multi-million-dollar contract. Like, the flash in the pan is great. That's awesome. But what does that actually translate to as far as being a quality quarterback? Like, Drew Lock has these flashes in the pan and no sustainability because he's just been hit and miss for the majority, and the majority of his play has been bad. So which one do you want? We'll get back to that conversation maybe even next week. Or
someone get these guys Snickers. No thanks. I hate Snickers, and I would much rather be as real as I possibly can instead of being everything's all sunshine and rainbows with the Broncos.
Yeah, no, it is okay to be a fan, but it is also okay to be an analyst. This is something I'm going to
that's the thing is, like, we got to try and be as unbiased as possible when our analysis of the team and sitting here, and as much as I want Drew Lock to be the guy, I mean, again, if you guys go read some of the stuff I wrote about him before the season, like, I was rooting for him.
Oh, yeah.
And I still rooting for him. We have to analyze the play that's out there on the field, and Drew Lock has not been a good quarterback. He has not been a quarterback that is worth giving 2021. I hope he turns it around.
Yeah, me too. I wrote about Drew Lock a lot going into the draft. I wrote about Drew Lock a lot going into the season last year, into the season this year. I wrote a lot about how I want Drew Lock to succeed. So don't think it is okay to be a fan, and it's okay to want the best for the Broncos. And sometimes to have both of those things, you still have to be able to remain critical within your analysis. I'm going to pin this tweet after the show. It's okay to be a fan. It's also okay to be critical in your analysis and want what is best for the team. And right now, it does not appear that Drew Lock is what is best for the team. I'm sorry. Now, with that, guys, we got to get out of here. Thank you all for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow the show at DVDD_pod. Follow at Mile High Huddle for instant breaking news and analysis. Keep up in touch with what's going on with the Huddle Up Podcast Network as well. While you're at it, follow me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Head on over to huddleuppod.com. Go get your merch. Make sure you guys get yourself a hat, a t-shirt. There's anything to suit your fancy. And if you're not able to do so in a financial position anyways, the 3 easiest things that you guys can do to help support the show and help us grow and get in front of as many Broncos fans as possible. Subscribe wherever you guys are watching this, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, anywhere that you guys are watching. Like every video that you guys see and share it to as many people as humanly possible. Now, Eric, before we get out of here, I always have to ask you, man, hashtag, any last words?
Yeah, I like fishing. It brings me happiness, but I'm actually happy right now. Like, you know what? I'm not angry or anything. I'm sad. I'm sad that the Broncos are doing poorly. I want them to do well, but I'm happy. Like, at the same time, hey man, after everything that I went through when my daughter was born, any day I get to see my daughter is a happy day for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I cannot wait to go back upstairs. In fact, I got to get out of here soon so I can go take care of Caven and Captain and Jace and everybody upstairs. So, anyways, with that, guys, thank you all for watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You all stay safe. Take care. Have a great and safe rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos. We'll see you guys next week.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. That's right. I always forget Thanksgiving, and Eric does too. So.
I hate the holiday. But have a happy Thanksgiving.
All right, guys, stay safe. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week. Always go Broncos. See you later.
Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.